Hey, welcome back to the Mind Your Liberty video channel. Thank you for joining us here for the second video. I had a video interview that I had recorded with a friend of mine, Jono Scott. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts, the video recording got messed up, but luckily I still have the audio. I still think it's a worthwhile listen. So I'm just going to put a placeholder video up, and even the audio got a little bit messed up. I wasn't really talking over him. My audio got a little ahead of his in the recording. Still working through all the kinks here. I'm pretty new at this video stuff, so I'm learning. Maybe when I actually have this figured out, I'll do a video of my path on that and how you can learn with me. But for now, here's the audio of the interview. Enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to the second video of the Mind Your Liberty video podcast. Today I'm super excited. I've got a good longtime friend of mine, Jono Scott, to have a conversation with here today. And I knew Jono as an assistant pastor at a church out in Denver, Colorado. And then on Facebook a little while ago, I saw he was running for city council. And so I thought, man, I got to have a conversation with this guy again. And I thought it'd be a good one to do on the video channel. So without further ado, here's Jono Scott. Jono.
Hey everybody.
Thanks for
having me on, Andy, and I appreciate your what you're doing here, and thoroughly enjoyed and appreciate being a part of it.
Well, I'm pretty stoked about this. I really appreciate you giving us some of your time. I know you're probably crazy busy getting down to crunch time. So what kind of things you've been doing as you get down to the wire here?
Election ballots are out right now. In Colorado, we have all mail-in ballot, which there's pros and cons to that, obviously, but that's where we are. So ballots have been out for just about 2 weeks, and we have 12 days left. So trying to get out the vote, the term for that is GoTV, G-O-T-V, and different sources doing that. I've learned through all this that it's too big for one person to do. It's kind of a good picture of how the body of Christ works at a church. Is no one individual can do it. It has to be multiple people doing it. And so I've been blessed to have several solid volunteers around me. And what a process this has been. Never thought I would do something like this, but I've been overwhelmed the last couple of years with the reality that we need Christians and conservatives just need to do four main things. And someone told me I needed to add a fifth, and I kind of like it too, is we need to study up. We need to know what's going on around us, specifically in our communities, our cities, our counties, but also state and federal level issues. But we need to study up, then we need to show up. We actually need to get involved. We need to stand up, and we need to speak up. And then the fifth one someone told me I needed to add was sometimes we need to shut up. And the reality is I've learned through this process, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. And so there are times where we need to answer not a fool according to his folly, but there are times we need to answer a fool according to his folly. And so there's a balance there, and been able to, I would say the privilege, but definitely a hardship of learning that through some beneficial ways and some negative ways as well.
Okay, cool. Well, I'd like to ask you about that. What would you say is some of the positive lessons you've learned through this process?
Yeah, I'll say, just kind of giving a little bit of background of what got me involved in this is obviously grew up in this community, same one you grew up in. I think, Andy, you grew up mostly in Aurora City Ward 3. And even though you may not know the boundaries of that, I believe that's where you spent most of your childhood, young adulthood, and on. But the city of Aurora split into 6 wards, and we're running for one of the ward positions. And just kind of well, I can get into that later, but really kind of started as a joke to my wife. Back in 2018, our mayor of Aurora died, which kind of sounds ironic as the start of a joke. That's not really what's the funny part. He had a real short bout of stage
Oh
4
man.
cancer, diagnosed late, and he died within about a month. And it threw everybody for a loop within the city leadership. And our city charter said that that has been a citizen, a resident of Aurora for a year without a felony, registered voter, could apply to be mayor. So I was at the time coaching 4 community soccer teams, Parks and Rec, with my kids, and to return soccer equipment on one side of the city hall, and went over to the clerk's office and said, "Hey, what do I need to do to apply to be mayor today?" And I
Wow.
did fill out the little paperwork, went home, and I told my wife, "Hey, guess what I did today?" And we got a big laugh out of it, and we thought
Uh-huh.
that was the end. Well, it wasn't. The mayor pro tem, a lady who used to go to our church and who was the current city councilor for Ward 3, she was interim mayor because the mayor died.
I remember
And the
that.
city council selects the person to fill a seat. To make the long story, I guess, longer, she texted me and said, "Hey," she's a Christian lady, conservative lady, and she said, "Hey, I saw your application. We need to talk." And I looked at my wife, and we both were, "Whoa, that's kind of funny." We laughed about it. We said, "Whoa." And so I got together with her, and I talked to her, and she said, "Jono, you're a young Christian, conservative Republican that is interested." And she said, "There's many of those." And she said, "If you're interested, I'd love to get you on some boards, some commissions within the city." And so, long story short, I was appointed I was appointed to a kind of a prestigious commission within the city called the Citizens Advisory Budget Committee. And so, in 2018, I was appointed by the mayor, the new mayor, for that. After I'd been interviewed to fill his seat,
Yeah.
without going into all that, um, he he appointed me to the budget committee, and he said, um, I said, you know, you're just talking to me, an average citizen. I don't have background in finance and all that kind of stuff. And my personal finances, I'm a budget hawk. But he said, well, if you want to learn the city, if you want to get involved, this is one of us to do it. So August of 2018, was placed on that committee, appointed. Each city councilor and the mayor gets to appoint 2 people. So there's 22
Okay.
people on that committee. And then by the end of the year, surprisingly, I was voted as one of the 3 executive officers of that committee for the 2019 year. And I really enjoyed it, got involved. And so for the last 3 years, 2019, 20, and 21, I've been an executive officer, one of the 3 executive officers on that 22 member
Wow.
budget committee. So then last year, 2020, people kept asking me, "Hey, you know the next step? It's an open seat. Your ward representative is term limited. Have you thought about it?" So I guess I should cut it off here, but basically said, I'll pray about it.
Good.
Went from about 50% sure, and finally I decided, after prayer and discussion with my wife and my dad and others, to go forward with it.
So you're still kind of assistant pastor there at that church in Denver, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I'm just curious, how much time have you been putting in on the finance committee?
It's not as much as you would think. The city has their own staff. They have full-time paid people, and all this is a advisory committee. So within the committee, we meet once a month for about 3 hours on a
Oh, wow.
Tuesday evening. And so then, as an executive member, you have about another hour or two. So there's this sense of, wow, that's too much of a commitment for me to be able to handle. But in reality, you can handle 4 or 5 hours a month to be able to plug into your community.
Sure, absolutely. And you'd already been doing a lot of that with the coaching soccer and stuff. You'd already been giving back a lot to the community. So, this city council position now, what are you expecting to do? Like, what do you think a day in the life of a
Mm.
fairly large city councilman looks like? I mean, and isn't an everyday thing.
Yeah,
Like, I know, yeah,
yeah. It's not a full-time position, and that's the only. So every city is different. In the city of Aurora, it's about 400,000 people now, and so it's not a small town. And geographically, we're poised to overtake Denver as far as population, economy within the next 20 years because we have room to expand, especially north and east. And it's already expanded south and east. So, it's a
yeah,
big city, growing pains, but the position is a part-time position. It's representative government, which I believe constitutionally our founding fathers had said we're not supposed to be, our political leaders are not supposed to be
right,
career politicians. They're supposed to be representatives within the community. And the way it works, it wasn't to serve a party,
yeah,
it was to serve the people. And that's the way our founding fathers had it intended, is a community gathers around and said, hey, who can be the voice for our community on the city or county or state or federal level? And what it has turned into is this hyper partisanship, is who can best represent the party on
right.
all these different levels. And so it's kind of been flipped on its head. And obviously I am a conservative, I'm a Republican, but as a leader, it meant to be
Yeah.
representatives, not rulers. We're supposed to represent the people,
So
not a
does that
party.
become is that party divisiveness? Does that become a thing even down to the city councilman position?
Oh, yeah. Um, what's going on in Aurora over the last year um, is absolutely insane. It's technically a unaffiliated race. Okay, so what
That's the
happens
way our
is
town is too.
on the ballot, the ballots are out. There's no party
Yeah.
on the ballot, but it has become so hyper partisan. There has been this push from the very far left. They actually have a majority projects. They want to get there's the makeup of counselors and counselors. Um, there's four of them that are conservative, and there were six of them that were varying levels left of center. Um, one of them fairly close to center left. The other two were leftists, and then there's three that are far left socialists. And then I would argue that there's one in particular that would be borderline communist. Um, but how that works is, 2 weeks ago on a city council meeting, there was a climate change. The one that was probably farthest left wanted to implement a climate change committee in the city, which essentially would be um, over the elected officials. And any ordinance or anything that would be approved on a city level would have to go through climate change committee panel uh, on top of
Hmm.
city council. So what they were doing, forming a organization, a department over top of the elected officials, kind of what they've done with health boards, to be honest.
Wow.
But they've over the elected to approve whatever the elected people were to do. And so obviously, uh, it, without going into all the details, it got voted down by
Wow.
tie. It didn't get approved. It got voted down by a tie. And they're hoping after this election to be able to force that through again. That's not that's
And
communist.
that was put to a
That's
popular vote,
that
or that was
that is
put on the
no within the
city council?
within the city council. Okay, so they want a committee to supersede, override
Yeah.
any city council decision based on climate change and how
Wow.
it'll impact the environment. Well, when it did not get passed, that one in particular called out those on the right and said the Republican Party, quote, is a sadistic death cult responsible for more. It's the worst organization in the history of mankind. Uh, Responsible for more death than any other organization in the history of mankind. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking Nazi, Mao
Yeah. Right.
Zedong, Joseph Stalin. Yeah, no, yeah, the Republican Party. And so what that has done is created this hyper partisan, then defensiveness
Sure.
and divisiveness,
And that was all
um,
going on within the city
it's
council
created.
in a town of 400,000
Yes.
people. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, I look around, I'm sure you do. I know you do. You look around at the world and you see all these national problems or global problems going on. You see the people pouring over the border in Texas and California and Arizona, and you see child trafficking, all this stuff. And, you feel like, what can I do? How is, the step you're taking? I mean, obviously I know you sought the Lord, and you're being led by the Holy Spirit to take this step to run for city council. And I think that's the way to do it. But uh, was that did that play into your motivation at all to run for city council, to just build your community and be a light where you're at?
Yeah. Yes. Obviously, whatever runs me, my two whys in life is to bring glory to God and advancement of Jesus Christ. So that's my foundation. So how am I going to do that? By loving like Christ, living like Christ, and leading like Christ. And how did he lead? He led by being a servant. So I want to serve my community, and I want to love God and love the people in my community. So that's the foundation. But then I'm not naive to think city council, that's the bottom of the barrel as far as involvement. Well, I would say commissions and boards would be the bottom of the barrel. And then just barely one step above that is city councils, school
Yeah, right,
boards,
right.
things like that. And so seeing what was going on around me and to saying, hey, I got to do something about it. And what I've told people over and over again is um, I grew up here. I've lived here over 30 years in this community. I'm raising my family. I was raised here. I'm raising my family here, and I don't want my kids 30 years from now to look back and say, "Hey, Dad, why didn't you do something
Mm-hmm.
about it?" And I, I, I want to at least say
Yeah.
I tried. And I think that's where I am, and this is the way to try. And whether I win or lose, I'll say this: this ward has been called to my face the most progressive, liberal area in the country. And you may say, what? No. Well, I'll just say what I'm stuck up against. My ward looks a little bit like Connecticut geographically, but there's 34,000 registered voters. Almost 15,000 of them are registered as Democrats. And so you think, oh, that means there's quite a few Republicans. No, then almost 14, just over 14,000 of them are registered as
Okay.
unaffiliated, which leaves just over 4,000 out of 34,000 registered
Wow.
Republicans. So, what does help me is it's an unaffiliated race. I'm not trying to lie about who I am, but the whole idea of serving the people in a party, that's kind of an important concept in this ward at this point. But all that to say, um, if I am doing everything in my power. I mean, been surrounded by some great people, but I have put in. My goal on election night is to look back and say I did
Mm-hmm.
everything I could. There's nothing I could have done different. And 12 days from the election day, I'll say I'm on pace for that. I
Amen.
did everything I could. I worked for it, and then I'll say, God, if you give it to me, great. It means a platform for your glory and advancement. If I lose, I'll say, great, more time with my family and more time with my ministry at church.
Yeah.
It's a win-win. But if if people say congratulations for running, I said, no, you mean condolences, because you stick your head out there, you're going to get shot at, and I have been, and it's been an emotional roller coaster at
Wow.
times. But having that solid rock of Christ is
Well, you're
it is
standing
so
for truth,
peaceful and stabilizing.
so you're gonna
Mm.
get you're gonna get shot at.
You're going to get it, and I knew we
Yeah.
would, but I didn't think things like our church constitution being uh, posted on social media and me being called a homophobic bigot and every other
Sure.
name
You
in the
probably
book.
expected some of that, though, right? Yeah.
I did, I did. And you just, I don't know, you just, it impacts you, but it doesn't
Yeah.
demoralize you. You know, it kind of invigorates you and motivates
Well,
you even more.
so, I mean, at least growing up, in the years I was growing up, I think the attitude is somewhat shifting, but I think some of the reasons why we ended up getting here in this situation is because I think a lot of evangelical Christians decided to sit out of the political world, and we just pray for them, but we don't actually take part in politics at all. And so, what would you say to someone that might still hold that position that it's not the Christian's place to step into the political arena?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. I would say it's easy to get overbalanced in either direction as far as politics go. It's easy for us to say, hey, politics is going to bring revival to our country.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think that's an overstatement. I'll say this also, the other extreme is politics are worthless. They have nothing to do with the spiritual
Hmm.
temperature of our country. I say that's an equally bad thing. So my out on it is this, and this has been such a piece for me when looking at the news and the federal politics and the state level politics and everything is first and foremost we are citizens of heaven. That's where our citizenship lies. You know, if you then risen with Christ, set your affection, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on those things. We
Hmm.
are citizens of heaven, but, and that's where I think historically what you're referring to is everybody's focused on. Yes, that is our that is where we are. We're citizens of heaven, but we are to be
Yeah.
ambassadors on earth.
And salt and
We're
light.
ambassadors. So citizens of heaven, ambassadors of earth,
Yep.
salt and light, and we are called to
Right.
impact our society. So many different ways you can do that politically, uh, across the board. Different God has set up the church body and Christians to have different talents and opportunities and abilities, and whatever ability or talent, grace gift, spiritual gift, whatever you want to call it, that God has
Hmm.
given that individual, we are responsible to be faithful stewards of this. And in this situation, I think God has thrust me into an environment where He's given me this opportunity and I need to be faithful to it. And I'll say this, I feel like besides that initial step of applying to be mayor as a joke to my wife, the doors have swung wide open. And I find myself like holding on to the door jamb and saying, no, 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 no. And it's like God is pushing me through and saying, no, this is for
Wow.
you. This is for you. This is for you. And I think we have to be faithful to what God does us, calls us to, and do it
Amen.
100%. Is it always easy? No. God never promised an easy path, but He did promise to be
Yeah. It
with
told
us
us to
on
be
that path.
strong and
And
courageous.
that's what I'm taking.
Yes.
Yep. So that's
Amen.
where I am.
Well, I got to say congratulations. I know you said that you shouldn't say that, but yeah,
Condolence.
condolences too. But congratulations for being willing to serve your community. I mean, for stepping up, and I mean, more power to you. I'm excited for you. I've been thinking about this, and why I was so interested in contacting you and getting this conversation is because I've had people telling me that I need to run for city council here in my hometown, and I I looked into it a little bit, and I prayed about it, and I didn't really feel peace about pursuing it, but I looked into it a little bit, and found out right off the bat that the finances are set up. To me, it seems like the finances are set up for the people that get elected to either be bought and paid for, or they're independently wealthy already, or they have some means where they can donate, because it looks like it's going to be a pretty big time constraint, even as a part-time job. And I guess I think I asked you, but how much time will that are you projecting to be putting into
Mhm.
city council there in Aurora? And I know we got to let you go.
Yep. Well, it's different for each, but I'd say I'm expecting it to be about 20 to
Okay.
25 hours a week. I just finished a master's degree that was taking me about 20 to 25 hours a week. So in my schedule, it's not a addition to my schedule, it's a replacement in my schedule. Um, it's one of those things where I do not have a lot of free time, a lot of me time. I don't have, I don't do gaming. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. My free time is with my family, and occasionally I go up and do a hunting trip for a couple days, but those type of things, I don't, you just have to be incredibly efficient with time. And then what I've been doing these last several months, it's been getting to bed late and getting up early and taking one day a week. I don't do any political stuff on Sunday, taking one day a week to rest and focus on God, and then hit it hard the other 6 days of the week. And we're called, redeeming the time because the days are evil. We only have one chance at this life, and only one life. Was it Julia that said only one life will soon be passed? Only what's done for Christ will last. And a William Carey quote that has been heavy on my mind for about 2 years now. I don't have it in front of me, so I might get it wrong, but he said something like this. He said, "I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of succeeding at things that
Wow.
don't matter."
Yeah.
And William Carey, the father of modern missions, I was thinking, man, what a quote. We just have to be incredibly focused with our time, our talents, our treasure, and say, hey, God, here's my life. Take it, use it. Help me not to waste my life, but help me to use my life. And I guess 20, 25 hours. The finance thing, I'll say this. I have been thoroughly amazed to see how God has provided me through this, because that was my big hang up too, is the finances of it. If in our city, in our state, and in our nation, we have essentially a governor who bought his seat, and Trump, many would argue, bought his seat. So you have a Republican and a Democrat, and you have to be rich to get in politics, is what the thing is. I'm not. If the church takes care of me, but the thought is, even if it was just myself, I would be middle of the middle class. But with the family of 6, technically I'm in the lower middle class. I'm not rich, I have to budget. I have to be smart with my finances. I have to use biblical principles with my finances. But I will say this, I have been overwhelmed at the support and help that I've gotten financially from friends, loved ones, other Christians, and then people in the community, that neighbors, and city council elections are expensive. Any election is expensive. And I think we have no one to blame but ourselves as the citizens. Because if we actually did our research in voting, people wouldn't have to market themselves. But the reality is, in our marketing world, we have turned elections into a marketing prowess. And so whoever markets themselves better, especially in a nonpartisan race, is going to win the election. And it's sad, but what does it take to win that? It takes money. And it's not fun. It's not right. And so grassroots support, people giving 10, 20, 25, $40, friends, neighbors, family, relatives across the board, across the country. You put your name out there, I do think people will support you and help you. I'll just say this, in the financial side of this, city council elections in Aurora this year has gotten out of control financially. I'll just say this. I have benefited from, I could go on and on and on about this, but the dark money side of things, we have no contact, no control, no power, none of that kind of stuff. And that's a frustration to me, because there's an outside organization that put an attack ad, 2 of them, out on my opponent. That's not who I am. But I've been getting all this kind of feedback saying, hey, you're a pastor. How are you attacking your opponent? You're throwing the mud. I have nothing to do with it. I even know who to tell to stop. Yeah. Who can I tell? I can't. The leftists actually wrote the campaign finance rules. And I literally have no idea who's doing it. And I literally can't tell anybody to stop it. So that's one frustration with me. But then on the personal side of the thing, my own campaign I'm running, it's been incredible to see how God has provided for that through friends and family and relatives.
Amen. Well, yeah, you've got, greater is he that is in you than he is in the world. And like you said, if you don't win, great. You did your part. If you did win, well, I'm excited to see what God's got in store for Aurora. And either way, proud of you, Jono. I'm proud to call you my friend. Proud of the stand you're taking, and this opportunity to love your neighbor through politics, because we see all the ideologies that we know, as not even as just as Christians, but as people that can read a history book. We see these ideologies that have caused so much pain, suffering, death, and destruction in the world in the 20th century, and really throughout history. Godlessness, but especially in the 20th century, we see this taking root in our own country, our own communities, and I'm proud of you for loving your neighbor enough to stand up and try and spread the truth and set people free from bondage through Jesus Christ and through just good policy. So I'm excited for you.
Thanks. I would say get on, look into boards, commissions, something like that. That would be a good start for you, Andy. Those who fail to your point, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. And we must learn. Conservatives are fired up. They're wanting to get behind people who actually are willing to run. And we just need people willing
Thanks,
to
Jono,
run.
and I really appreciate your time. I'm gonna let you go, or at least stop the recording here real quick. Thanks, Jono Scott. Oh, and can you send me a couple of them ballots? Just kidding.
I wish.
Just kidding.
No, I can't.
All right. Well, go vote for Jono if you live in Aurora, and or send your ballot in. And what was that website one more time? Yeah.
For me?
Yeah.
For my campaign? JonoScott.com.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Jono. And I'm going to hit this button. All right, guys, that about wraps it up. Thanks for watching or listening, as it turns out. I hope you learned something. I know I did. And be sure and subscribe, hit the bell notification so you know when I upload new content. Also, go check us out on Odyssey. That's a censorship-proof platform. And also, again, I want to apologize. I didn't actually have a video feed for Jono today. Apologize to Jono if you're watching. And I'll do better in the future. And bear with me as I'm learning. I appreciate you guys. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time. And remember to mind your liberty.